Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources on our desks today.
Yeah, lots of developable patch notes, community frame data analyses,
Yeah.
competitive tier lists, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And it's all focused on the brand new Nana Shimura DLC for My Hero Academia, All's Justice. So, our mission today for you is figuring out how developers took this mythic predecessor from the lore and actually translated her historical weight into a fully realized 3D playable character.
Right, and what really stands out in these dev notes is the intent to build a dual nature character. Like, they had to mechanically capture the nurturing mentor, but also the devastating brawler.
Which is a tough balance. It's almost like taking a historical sports legend and miraculously dropping them onto a modern field.
Oh, absolutely. Translating that lore into actual inputs requires straight balancing.
Yeah, because playing her feels less like controlling a standard fighter and more like, I don't know, operating heavy machinery.
That's a great way to put it.
You have this massive power, but the calibration has to be exact. I mean, looking at the frame data, her basic strikes are just simple, single-button inputs.
But the moment you try to chain them into her heavier combos, you run into these massive animation locks.
Right. You can't just mash buttons. You have to commit.
Yeah, and that commitment is the core of her design. Chaining her strikes into her aerial abilities takes near frame-perfect timing.
Oh, wow.
If you miss the window, you're left completely exposed. The mechanics themselves are telling the story of wielding one for all. It physically demands precision and punishes reckless execution.
Which mirrors the grueling toll the power takes on the user in the lore. Wait, though. Putting a heavy-hitting brawler in the air sounds like a terrible idea for game balance.
It usually is.
Right. Like, if you take a character with massive damage output and remove their ground limitations, doesn't that just make her this overpowered, untouchable tank?
Well, it totally would if her quirk, float, was just standard flight. But it's actually functionally a stall mechanic.
Interesting. How so?
When you trigger float, she suspends in midair, which effectively pauses her momentum. Think of her design like a heavy pendulum storing kinetic energy.
Okay, tracking with you.
At the top of the arc, she's smooth and hovering. It allows you to stall out the clock and bait out your opponent's anti-air attacks.
And once they whiff, you release that stored energy into a devastating downward strike.
Exactly. She heavily punishes anyone who refuses to adapt to that verticality.
So you're completely rewiring your opponent's muscle memory. I mean, when you have the controller in your hands, you're usually conditioned to block low or manage ground spacing.
Right, the traditional grounded defenses.
But when Nana hovers, she forces you to abandon all that and look up. She totally dictates the spatial geometry of the fight.
She really does. And doing a deep dive into the community forums shows players aren't just fixated on the meta shift. The narrative presentation is actually feeding back into the gameplay, too.
Oh, yeah, the animation team didn't just add her iconic white cape and particle effects for the sake of visual flair.
No, not at all. Those high-definition plus ultra animations actually serve a mechanical purpose.
They act as visual metronomes, right?
Yep, precisely. When her cape flares or the particle effects trigger during a specific startup animation, it visually signals her invincibility frames.
That is so smart. The game is basically rewarding players who pay attention to the character design.
Exactly, by giving them the exact timing needed to execute her most dangerous counters.
And even the extra DLC missions with Gran Torino aren't just lore filler. They actively contextualize her fighting style.
Right, they show you exactly why she developed these specific aerial traps during her prime.
It completely bridges the gap. You get a character that balances high-speed aerial mechanics with raw, punishable power.
It just proves that you can respect a purely historical past-generation mentor while fundamentally enriching the modern competitive environment.
It's a massive win for the community, which, leaves you with a pretty wild thought to mull over. Yeah, if the developers can take a mythic predecessor who mostly existed in flashbacks and turn her into a meta-defining playable fighter, what other unseen characters from the lore could completely upend our understanding of combat strategy if they finally stepped onto the modern playable field?
Oh, man.
Just imagine who else might be waiting on that historical bench.